Here's what it's like going on the cheapest tour compared to the most expensive tour in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Hey, it's Jess, the fun-sized foodie, and I've eaten and explored in over 12 countries and 30 plus major cities. So I finished a tour to Vietnam and Thailand a while ago, and while we were there, we went on 2 different tours that were vastly different from each other. The first one was one of the cheaper tours where we went southwest towards the Mekong River Delta. So it was a 174 kilometer trip, which is a little bit over 108 miles. And that took about a 3-hour bus ride from Ho Chi Minh to the Mekong Delta. That whole trip was about 1.3 million Vietnamese dollar, which is about less than 52 USD. And for the most expensive tour we went on was exploring Kenya, the mangrove forest. We traveled south about 48 kilometers, almost 30 miles, and that bus ride was about 1.5 hours. So that tour was about 2.2 million Vietnamese dollars, which is about less than 90 USD. Now I'm going to show you guys what it's like from beginning to end and what I recommend is worth it. Anyways, let's get into it. It's 8 a.m. We're gonna head to the Mekong Delta today. So we arrived at the office where we booked our tour and then we bussed all the way to the Delta. The bus was full with 10 to 12 people in our group along with our tour guide and driver. It was a 2 to 3 hour drive to get to the ferry port. Once we arrived, we saw a line of these ferries and met with another tour guide who showed us around the Delta. I guess our initial tour guide is responsible for getting us to and from the Delta, but not the tour itself. I mean, you can see her sleeping here for most of the tour. When you get on the ferry, they'll take you to one of the 4 main villages who live on the Delta. We went to one called Unicorn Island and our tour guide shows the plants that were growing there. This one in particular moves when you touch it, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then we got to sit down at a table where we were served honey kumquat tea and snacks that were made from locally sourced ingredients. On the real though, they're trying to sell to you, but it's to support the locals on the Delta. And then you get to see some animals like a friendly python that you get to hold. It's not recorded on here because I was too scared, but yeah, do that if you want. Afterwards, they'll give you a tour of their coconut candy factory, as coconuts are what they produce the most on the Delta.
In the past, they can go in here. But it's very hard when you stay here.
And they'll make so many different products just from coconuts, from candies to crackers. When I chose this tour, I thought we were going to learn how to make some coconut candy, but that was not the case. We observed the process, tasted some freshly made coconut candy, and actually bought some back with us because they were really good. One thing that's interesting to note is that because South Vietnam is hot and humid majority of the time, the candy is chewy and soft. But when we brought it back to the US with us, they got hard as a rock. So if you want to bring some back, and what you can do is to microwave them for a few seconds to get them back to their chewy texture. Yeah. Later on, we were served local fruits with salt and chili, while they performed traditional Vietnamese music called cải lương. I'm personally not a fan of the music, but I know my grandpa is. So we have here pineapples, guava, and a fruit called sapodilla. Sapodillas are native to Vietnam, and it was my first time having it. It's like eating a sweet papaya with the texture of a pear. And what Vietnamese people love to do is to dip their fruit in salt and chili. I typically go without it, but a lot of my family members love eating it with salt and chili. Next up, we got to go down the river in this canoe with these Vietnamese aunties rowing and guiding us. These ladies are so professional that their socks don't even get wet. And if you're wondering, they cover themselves up to protect their skin from the sun. It was a pretty cool part of the trip, but half of me was scared because I can't swim and I was afraid of the canoe tipping over. But all you have to do is stay still and let these aunties do their job.
Mình giặt đồ này nọ mà đâu có ăn được đâu không?
Đòn ngoài.
Để như là ngồi trước đi quay sau. Mà lúc đi mình có khách thì mới được.
Chứ mà còn phải gạt ra cái khách té. Nó biết là cái thích giải á, bơi một phần bơi đâu có nổi đâu. Mà gặp dừa, mà thấy cũng có. Nhưng mà nước cạn, cái lâu ví dụ như có nhiều nước cạn mà nó thì cái lâu á, mà có mưa gây cái cạn á là nó có.
Rồi tới 300 cái gì?
To end your tour, you'll be treated to a lunch at a villa filled with a lot of traditional Vietnamese food. We got pork, shrimp, egg rolls, soup, spring rolls with fish that's been locally caught and then deep fried. They'll wrap it up for you so you don't have to, and it will be wrapped with fish, lettuce, cucumbers, noodles, and a slice of pineapple. For dessert was this giant fried mochi ball cut up into bite-sized pieces. Then you'll head on your way back via the ferry, drinking fresh coconut juice and enjoying the view. Now let's move on to the most expensive tour. After we were picked up from our hotel, we were driven down to Gan Gia. That's about 30 minutes, and luckily there was no one else in our group, just us, so we got to know our tour guide really well. We arrived at a ferry port and the entire bus came onto the ferry. We were one of the first to arrive, and next thing we knew, a fleet of moped drivers filled the rest of the ferry. And then we were off. On a ferry headed to Ganya. We got to go outside and check out the view. When we arrived, our driver drove further for what felt like 20 minutes. And then we walked into the forest. The entire forest was covered in mangrove trees where the roots of the trees are elevated and visible, making it possible to survive during the rainy season and flooding. Then we arrived to a dock, and unbeknownst to us, we got into a speedboat. Apparently, we had a personal speedboat driver, and to get from place to place on this tour was via a speedboat. So that was really cool. Our first stop on this tour was to see the forest bats. So we had to get on this boat with this Viet auntie rowing us to see the bats. I didn't even know forest bats were a thing. I thought bats only lived in caves.
Dạ đúng, không có việc làm. Mà không có người dân, ví dụ như nghĩ tới dân người ta cần việc làm đi thôi, dễ dãi cho tụi nó chút. Mà nó nghiên cứu xong về bắt đầu ở Singapore, nó rốt ráo nó làm rồi để con nó chết rồi nó hôi lắm. Nếu cái này cạn thì còn ha, cái đó dở đập đi trời.
When we arrived to the spot, we had to be super quiet because they were asleep since it was the morning. I don't think you can see them from this video because even I had a hard time seeing them with my own eyes. Initially, I didn't care for bats, but apparently they eat mosquitoes and now they are my favorite animal. After this, we're headed back to go feed some alligators. Once we arrived, we got onto a cage boat, and to feed the alligators, there were dead sardines on a fishing line attached to a long stick. I think the swamp around there had at least 40 alligators, and we were surrounded by them all around. And the sardines on the stick definitely stunk. Alligators love dead, stinky fish. It took some time before the alligators came by to snatch up the sardines on the stick. But everyone will get their turn to feed an alligator. Despite it being stinky, I had a lot of fun feeding these alligators because they kind of get aggressive and it's a little scary, but exciting. This morning we went to go see the bats at Mangrove Forest, and then we fed crocodiles, and then you can go up this giant skyscraper to view the entire this forest and island. Then we're gonna have lunch, ăn bữa trưa, and then after that we're gonna go play with some monkeys. There's a lot of mosquitoes. I haven't gotten bitten because of the DEET I've been using and drowning myself in DEET. So they've been like staying away from me. For lunch, we had some traditional Vietnamese dishes, and we had a nice view. We got to eat near the mangrove trees. We got a fried rice, shrimp salad with some shrimp crackers, sweet and sour tomato soup with vermicelli, and some deep fried skewers. The lunch was so good, and best part of all, it was all inclusive. They did have some other things on the menu that you could order, but that was up to you. This was enough food for us. We just finished lunch and now we're about to head out to go see some monkeys. These monkeys are really wild and not vicious, but we'll be surrounded by monkeys, and they tend to like take everything because they think there's like food and stuff. They'll take your like glasses, your backpack, anything that they can grab their hands on, they'll take it. So because of that, I likely won't be recording anything, but we'll see. There are monkeys here, but they're a lot nicer and they only want food. So after lunch, we got onto the speedboat to get back on the bus and head to Monkey Island. And just after a few hours, it was high tide. It's high tide! You can see on the sign it says no outside food. The monkeys are already fed well by the people on the island. So I ended up not recording anything because I was afraid of all my work being taken away by these monkeys. We did see a couple get their stuff stolen by them, and they did not know what to do. Our tour guide said that if this happens to you, then you try to throw them some food so that they'll be busy catching it and let go of your stuff. Last part of the tour, we visited a historical museum with artifacts from the Vietnam War and how the people of Gan Ye have adapted to their environment over time. Overall, the best tour was the most expensive one, the Gan Ye tour, because it had so many different activities, from watching the bats to feeding the alligators and fending off monkeys. I'd recommend it for travelers and for people who are more of the explorer type. It's also great for kids because they'll get to run around and see different wildlife. Plus, the travel distance isn't bad at all compared to the other one. If you want a more laid-back tour and to see Vietnamese culture more passively, then the Mekong Delta tour is probably a best fit for you. Well, that's it for this video. Until next time. If you found this video helpful, you also might like this video.